Hey folks, I'm back once again to talk about the Time Stranger DLC. This time we're chasing Parallelmon with the help of ex-Antibody Digimon Asuna and Dr. Simmons. The new additions to the roster this time around are ex-Antibody versions of a few Royal Knights, which is good as it's nice to have representation of the ex-Antibody Digimon in this game for those who are fans of it outside of the natural carriers. I know many people dislike ex-Antibody Digimon designs since typically they have a lot of elements to their design, and a lot of people will call that over-design. I don't disagree with this, but I think that X-Evolutions allow opportunities for designers to reimagine existing Digimon, similar to regional forms in Pokemon, and I think it's great to have different versions of your favourite Digimon. So overall I like X Digimon, and I'm glad to see them in the game. As with previous DLC Digimon though, there isn't much in the way of interesting new gameplay in their attacks. Outside of effects of Omnimon X's All Delete doing more damage to targets with less than 20% HP, which is pretty bad. I would have preferred it to do more damage against targets at 100% HP, which I think would have made more sense for the move, even if it would have made it a bit strong. But it's kinda supposed to be, since it destroyed the whole digital world in the X Evolution movie. This DLC feels like it moves at a much faster pace than the other two, which I appreciated a lot, as the last two DLCs was kinda just running through a lot of meaningless corridors, but there's much less of that here. We start the same way as all the other DLCs, with being blasted away by Parallelmon and immediately making friends with the first new Digimon that we see, which in this case is Omnimon X and Dorumon. In the very next scene, Asuna and Dr. Simmons from another timeline join us, and we are then introduced to two other groups. On one side we have Gallantmon X and Allforce Vidramon X, who are trying to stop the X program, and on the other we have Magnumon X and Jesmon X, who believe the X program should be allowed to continue to bring about the next stage of evolution for Digimon. As we travel through the Akashic back door, we see various cutscenes that further explored these viewpoints, followed by Dr. Simmons explaining her thoughts on why these viewpoints are wrong and misguided. I quite enjoyed this, as there's some good writing here that actually made for a quite interesting discussion on what is right, and how natural selection can affect those with the capacity to understand what is happening to them. We also get some scenes of Asuna and Kuremi, which are mostly just continuations of conversations from previous DLC. I particularly like the scene between Asuna and Dr. Simmons, where they are discussing leaving public safety and the reasons for doing so. We got to see quite a lot more of Asuna's and Dr. Simmons' personality in this DLC, which was really great to see. Along the way, we also learned that Kuga is in the back door and has stolen data for Dr. Simmons that holds valuable information as to how Parallelmon can time travel. Both sides want this as they believe it can be used to further their cause. A cutscene plays at some point where we see that Kuga actually has some regret about his actions that caused the Shinjuku Inferno, and Dr. Simmons surprisingly forgives him as she needs his help, although she is quite rude about it, but all things considered, that's pretty fair. All sides eventually meet up and fight over the data Kuga holds, during which Parallelmon appears and Dorumon jumps in front of his attack to save them, seemingly costing its life. Upon seeing this, the others realize the error of their ways. I mentioned this with other moments like this in the past DLCs, but these characters are all too new to us for these scenes of sacrifice to carry much emotional weight, and so it fell very flat. The radical opinions of these two parties changing off of one death when the X program would have brought about so many is nothing short of odd, and ends up feeling like exactly what it is, which is just a convenient way to carry the plot to its conclusion. Dorumon is revived by their change of heart and evolves to Alphamon. The evolution scene was a bit of a letdown for such an important part of the X-Evolution story, especially compared to others in previous DLCs and indeed the main game. Speaking of the conclusion, I'm very happy to say that the final battle with Parallelmon was actually great. In previous DLCs it was nothing too interesting, but this time around there was a unique strategy and mechanics used that made for a fun fight. Another positive was seeing that there was a hint of a connection to Cybersleuth, as the Alphamon talks about Gurumi and how they would like to meet them, whilst being giving the time travel data from Dr. Simmons, and I saw a nod to previous games. Asuna getting mad at Kuga and his little cry afterwards was pretty funny too. Unfortunately, that's where the positive ends, as after the fight we don't get the conclusion to the Parallelmon story that I was hoping for, and instead everything is left up in the air as to whether we'll actually be able to stop him for good. It seems that this is set up for another set of DLC, but honestly if that's the case, I'm not really sure that's what I want. I would personally have preferred for them to end Parallelmon's story here and explore a new story in more DLC if we are indeed going to get more. We should find out more at DigimonCon later this month, but we're gonna have to wait and see. I also hope if there is more DLC that it's fleshed out a bit more and they take the time to make it a decent length so that we actually spend meaningful time with the new characters and villains. I hope you've enjoyed watching my reviews of the DLCs. If you missed the others, then feel free to go back and check them out, and thanks for watching.